All right, we're live. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of WP Crowd. Today is going to be another good one. We're talking higher education and WordPress. As always, we're going to start with introduction. So I'm going to start on my left with Chris.
Gotta find that mute button. Chris Wigman, I'm a senior engineer for TEDUP, working on WordPress. I'm spent a number of years working in higher ed, so I've been around it for a while.
Very cool. Curtis?
All right, I'm Curtis Grimala. My official title is Senior Web Technologist at the University of Mary Washington. I deal a lot with WordPress here because we're using it for just about everything, and I also consult with a lot of different universities and nonprofits throughout the country, working with WordPress mostly.
Oh, Mike.
Mike Corkum. I'm senior web developer at Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. We use WordPress for all of our public-facing websites.
Awesome. Rachel?
Good morning. I'm Rachel Carden. I'm a web developer and designer at the University of Alabama. It is probably our most used CMS here, although there is a little bit of a variety. Yeah, so hi.
And Shanta.
Hi, good morning. My name is Shanta. I'm an instructor in web design at Sheridan College, and unfortunately our website is not. The Sheridan College-facing website is not actually done in WordPress. They redesigned it about a year ago. It's horrible, and they didn't ask us. But we are one of the few full-time programs that I've found that actually uses WordPress as part of our full-time program to teach web design.
Awesome. And I'm Roy. I'm a WordPress developer, not in any type of school setting at all. I work at Disney. I also run Code Cavalry. So let's do some news. 4.3 came out this week, or yesterday, right? Haven't seen anything too major about it. Saw some minor issues with PHP 4 constructs, but hopefully those will get fixed. So no fires that I saw yet, but who knows? Maybe by 4.1 something major will come up and we'll all have to, I don't know, go backwards or something. That's it. It's been a pretty quiet week. I haven't really been around, so no WP drama, nothing like that. Our meme of the week is Star Wars related because I was involved, or I was around for the D23 Expo. No, I didn't get to go. I got to hear a lot about it. So that's our meme of the week. Check it out on our website. All right. So higher education. There's a lot of similarities since we've been talking about it. I find with my world, which is more enterprise. But Rachel, why don't you just start out with talking about what you wrote about? You wrote about WordCampus, which is kind of this thought of maybe having a WordCamp or conference dedicated to WordPress and higher ed.
So yeah, obviously we all know, most of us should at least know about like WordCamps and those kind of events for, you know, those of us in the WordPress world. They're a lot of fun. You get to learn a lot and you get to meet awesome people. And there are also conferences for higher education web. One of the big ones is HigherED Web, and there's PSU Web, and there's a few others scattered around, and those are also great. And generally, every year, just about, I go to the HigherED Web one, and I follow along on the other ones. And they're great, and they're wonderful, and I do learn a lot. And I go to as many WordCamps as I can, and I do learn a lot. But I find at all these events that it's really hard to find, or I guess to kind of mix the two together. When you go to the WordCamps, they don't really touch on a lot of topics that we face in higher ed that are very higher ed specific. And although actually a lot of the higher ed web ones will touch on WordPress. But I had this idea that it would be amazing if we could have kind of a meshing of the two worlds and have basically what would be a WordCamp, but for those of us who use WordPress in the world of higher ed, so that we can focus on some more of these higher ed specific issues that us WordPress users face. And so, so we got that article out there, the kind of pitch out there with some of my ideas, and if you're interested, you can show your support at wordcampus.org. Which kind of helps me gather up all the people who are not only interested, but it allows you a place to kind of share some ideas. And if you'd be interested in hosting, I think that it would be the most logical and best solution if these events were hosted on campuses. Most campuses have really beautiful facilities. We just hosted I chaired and we hosted a HigherED Web regional here earlier this summer, and we have great facilities. We're not near an airport, which kind of is a con, but if campuses can donate their space in kind, it's a really huge cost saver. And why not talk about, you know, higher ed stuff like that on a campus? And so that's one kind of thought that I share. And in the wordcampus.org submissions I've been receiving, there have been several universities who are showing like real excitement and would love to host it there. So I feel like that's definitely something that's going to work out and would be pretty cool. Yeah.
What kind of things are you guys finding differ in the higher education realm compared to, let's say, building a website for a small business? So like someone who's a consultant building for a small business understands WordPress from a point of view of, okay, I need to install this theme, I need to install these plugins, it needs to collect leads. What are some of the challenges you guys face in the higher ed realm? Like what are some things you guys have to comply with or deal with that might not come up to a normal consultant?
Academic freedom.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah.
Academic freedom sums up about 90% of all the stress I had in higher ed.
You know, I mean, I would also add a lot of it is, you know, I mean, there are certainly, especially as public institutions, which I know at least a handful of us are public institutions, we have to deal with a lot of, you know, requirements from the government. We have a little more pressure on us, though. You know, I mean, certainly any educational institution at this point has pressure to at least conform to Section 508, more looking towards you know, the WCAG 2.0 guidelines for accessibility. But again, as a public institution, we have slightly more pressure on us to try and be accessible, to try and make the website accessible, and to teach our content managers to be, you know, to make things accessible. And tying into kind of what Chris just said about academic freedom, it's at a lot of, certainly at small businesses, you're never going to come in, you know, you're rarely ever going to come across this, and even at large companies and things like that, you're not going to come across it very often. But, you know, when you're using certainly something like WordPress at a higher ed institution, you've got, well, we use a lot of distributed authorship. So you have, I mean, we have hundreds of content managers here at the University of Mary Washington. You know, there are some other institutions I know of that are using WordPress that pretty much have it locked down, so only a handful of people are managing content. But, you know, I mean, as far from my perspective, one of the beautiful things about using WordPress is allowing people to manage their content, just like we allow, you know, as consultants, we allow our small business, you know, customers to manage their own content. And so you have to deal with a lot of that distributed authorship, a lot of teaching content managers how they should be doing things, and you're no longer teaching one client at a time. You're trying to keep track of, you know, hundreds, at least tens, if not hundreds, of clients that are updating their own content throughout the entire system. I mean, that's one of the big things that we deal with a lot, is making sure that people know what they're doing and how they should be doing it, and making sure they're not breaking the site when they're updating their content, things like that. So, especially when you're talking about higher ed, where we've got complex architectures and things like that, you're looking at, you know, constantly trying to find, if somebody says something's broken, trying to find what they broke, where it's broken, because you've got, you know, thousands of pages. I don't know about you guys, but I know at one point we had, I think, close to 40,000 pages. We're not a huge school, but still, we have huge numbers of pages as opposed to, the 5 or 10 page website you do for a lot of small businesses. So.
We have, I mean, we kind of have, we're a pretty large school, and we have about 36,000 students, and all on one campus. And so we're basically, something that we kind of struggle with is we're decentralized, and so we're very spread out, and not everyone uses WordPress, but even if you do, you're using it pretty much just for your division or your department. Our public-facing, main website is not WordPress, and so basically it's like I use it for student affairs, and arts and sciences uses it, and some other, it's kind of spread around, and so then within those divisions you have your own WordPress install, and you're doing your own WordPress things, and so then it's, why not take advantage of that, and let's share resources, and let's share plugins, and let's share stuff like that, and so it's almost like having our own little open source, community within the higher ed institution, and trying to, benefit the most from that, and so that's, that's something kind of interesting to higher ed.
Do you guys have do you guys ever share plugins or any open source work with other colleges or other universities or other higher ed places? Do you guys ever work on stuff like that together, or is it pretty much you keep everything within your own university?
We shared a lot when I was at Southern Illinois. That's very institutional specific. The stuff is so damn protectionist.
Yeah.
Anything we put out, we tried to work with somebody else on.
Yeah, and I would say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, we've been working on a couple authentication plugins that I've been trying to finish and share. I've got some feedback from Rachel. I'm working on a CAS plugin that I'm looking to make public.
Yay!
Yeah. We don't have, we have, at Carleton, we have a very small team. We only have a couple developers, and we're dealing with, over 300 websites. So we don't always have a lot of time. Like, we write our plugin, and the plugin can be, the plugins are sort of specific to what we need them to be, and then the intent is always there to make it go open source, but then we need to find the time to come back to it. We're lucky we're lucky that our boss actually, wants to promote WordPress and wants to help, so we actually get some time to help the community, but right now it's sort of limited to helping out on IRC or Stack Overflow. I really would like to release more, but right now it's just, it's a really busy job.
Yeah, that brings up another, I want to share, and I do as much as I can, and we actually have a community here that we try to bring together all the web people because we're so spread out. We call WebTide, and I created a GitHub repo for us in hopes of encouraging, people to put stuff on there. So far, it's not that old, but so far I'm the only one, and I have maybe 3 plugins on there. And I wrote a CAS plugin too, which is, me and Mike have been chatting about, and I know that it needs work. I need to go back in and rethink how I did some stuff on it, some, UI stuff. But I would love to share as much as possible, and I would love to collaborate as much as possible. But kind of like what Mike said, it's also hard because also in higher ed you're generally under-resourced and you're generally understaffed, and you're probably doing the job of 2 or 3 people, and so time is, do you spend the time, extra effort on working on these bigger projects, or do you focus on getting some stuff done and your project's done and the most efficient and timely and quickly manner. So it can be tough sometimes, but also if you think about it one way, that you invest that time and that collaboration, and you could get so much in return from it. So it's definitely a battle sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say we, other than the things that include sensitive information and stuff like that specific to UMW, we at least make everything we do public. You know, we have everything in a GitHub repo at this point. It used to be on one of my personal Subversion servers, but everything is out there in the public if people want to look at it. You know, I've released a handful of plugins, you know, in the repository that were things that I did for UMW. We had, you know, way back when we launched our previous iteration of the site, when we first launched in WordPress, we had Ron Rennick develop a plugin for us. We paid him to develop this plugin for us, and as part of our contract with him, it was, you know, it was released into the document repository, you know, things like that. So I mean, again, and that's part of us, certainly the culture here at UMW, and being a public institution. We feel like, you know, the public is paying for us to do this, so therefore whatever we do needs to be shared with the public. So that's a lot of the culture here at UMW.
I love that. That's awesome.
I think that's a really good philosophy. I wish we had the time to do the same.
There are a lot of people that started out, right, and there are a lot of people that started out developing plugins for higher ed, that the plugins kind of took off and did their own thing, and people left, you know, Chris Wiegman. But, you know, I mean, and that's, you know, and it's not just Chris. I mean, Boone Gorges was in, you know, higher ed before he went off to do his own thing. There's an awful lot of stuff that came out of City University of New York, you know, the CUNY Commons and stuff like that, you know. Just there's a huge amount of information and resources and WordPress expertise that came out of CUNY. I know that the people up at I think it's University of British Columbia, are doing huge things with WordPress, and they don't necessarily share a whole lot because they're coming from a different direction than I am. You know, they don't share a whole lot with me as a web developer, but they, you know, they talk probably once a week with our Teaching and Learning Technologies office, you know, to discuss new things they're doing with WordPress and you know, how they're collaborating on things and stuff like that. So, you know, I mean, there's absolutely a ton of sharing going on, and it's not just between higher ed, it's also higher ed people sharing through the repository and things like that to make these features available. Because even though we have a lot of unique situations that we face, we're also straddled with a lot of the same requirements and proprietary systems and things like that that you find in enterprise. So like Mike said, you know, CAS, between CAS and Active Directory and LDAP, you know, pretty much higher ed and enterprise are the only two groups using those systems. And so, you know, higher ed has to kind of roll their own because a lot of enterprise is going to do it and keep it behind closed doors. So higher ed is where it has to be done and where those things get released.
Also, I mean, because we are kind of, you know, sometimes we don't have the time to build our own things because our time is limited, and so sometimes, I mean, it's not just, we go out and we depend on, you know, I guess non-higher ed-y plugins to help us do our jobs just like anybody else does. You know, you're not gonna always reinvent the wheel, or, you know, there are some plugins that I use on every single site and they help me do my job, and some, you know, I have a limited budget. Sometimes I will pay for some things. For some I have to pay for a couple plugins, and so it's not really quite sure where I was going with that, but I do want to touch on the fact that, you know, we might have low budgets, but we do, you know, we will invest, you know, in a good resource, especially since we may not have the time to, you know, build it our own.
I feel like another kind of big thing that's coming out of education, although it shouldn't be, is accessibility. It seems like a lot of the accessibility talks are catered around the education realm right now, and, you know, moving out from there and how everyone should be doing accessible stuff. But it seems like a lot of the plugins or a lot of the bigger names are coming out of the education realm. What do you guys feel like? Why do you feel that's different? Or do you guys have certain regulations that you have to do that maybe a small business doesn't?
That's exactly what it is. There's requirements. There's legal requirements, not just at the federal level, but also in a lot of cases the state level. Illinois had a pretty stringent accessibility requirement that you have to follow. You don't have a choice. So you're forced to go above and beyond what enterprise is often going to do. In fact, oftentimes the budget gets dedicated to things in design that are more accessibility oriented versus pure design, things like that, at least in my universities that I've been to.
I wish. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, Chris raised the point. They are requirements for us. They are suggestions for businesses and things like that. I mean, we see how well that works out for some larger organizations like Target. Target got sued because their website wasn't accessible. Didn't work out very well for them. They settled, but for them, it's a suggestion, and it's something they could be sued over. For us, it is, and again, especially being public institutions, I'm not sure how much of this conveys over to private institutions, but as public institutions, as institutions of the government, we've got a lot of requirements for the accessibility and how things need to be, and we've got, I wish there was more, honestly, but we do have some watchdogs, within the government that go through and check, that check the accessibility and things like that, and ping and potentially punish various institutions based on what they're doing. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see. I'm honestly surprised at this point that we're not seeing more of this type of stuff coming out of Canada, because Canada, has extremely stringent accessibility regulations at this point. Went into effect about 2 years ago, I'd say. Does that sound about right? There were a lot of brand new accessibility regulations that went into effect up there. That I'm surprised we're not seeing more contributions from that angle. As far as tools and things like that. And resources to help us with accessibility. So.
Being in Ontario,
We have two Canadian callers, so let them speak for Canada.
We are, in Ontario specifically, we're under the AODA, which is an Accessibility Act, and it is pretty strict. I can't remember the exact dates, so forgive me, but we need to be WCAG AA compliant within a few years, and currently we just need single A compliancy. But there's huge fines. It's in the realm of $100,000 a day if we're not accessible. It's huge. We use countless tools. I can't even name all of the tools. Like all of the automated scanners, JavaScript bookmarklets. We have a tool. We have a service with a company called SiteImprove. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of it. It's pretty expensive, but it's really good. We're all over accessibility, and I do think it's a good thing. And I mean, at first it was kind of annoying, but after a while, you sort of realize that, a lot of the standards that make content accessible are just really good coding standards to begin with, right? Like it's good markup. I mean, there's more to it than just that, but after a while, after working on it for months and months and months, it just sort of became like a goal to just became obsessed with getting the sites accessible. Every single little error that I could find, I wanted to fix. And we're pretty close now. I think most of our stuff is around AA. We have some warnings, and the color contrast thing is the hardest one.
Yeah, that one always gets me.
Try telling your designer, no, you can't use that color on that color. They don't want to hear it.
No. And one of the things actually that we do at Sheridan College, for those of you who know Jordan Quintal, he's actually been a regular guest speaker in all of our classes. So while we probably have a team here that actually does deal with that, from the actual front-facing right to the students, we deal with that right from our beginner web design class. And we tell them, look, you are going to fill in every single one of those alt tags on your images, or we will fail you on the assignment. We make sure that they are actually going to fill that in, and we carry that through the intermediate and into the advanced, where we usually have Jordan come in and actually show them, look, this is what your website might look like. And the fact that he deals in WordPress just makes it all that much better. So if you guys out there haven't seen him, look up his talks for sure.
We've one of our biggest challenges with accessibilities is having our content editors actually put the content in how they should be. I mean, we do training as much as we can, and we try to make fields required as much as we can, but some people just don't get it. The biggest problem we have is people uploading banners with banner images with text in them. And no matter how many times we tell you that's not accessible, people still do it. And having over 300 websites, we can't go through and check every day. Super frustrating.
I came across. I'm having an issue with getting rid of PDFs everywhere. There's so many PDFs. Everything is a PDF. But it was like it went up a step further the other day when I found a page where they had put in all the text in a PDF and then taken pictures of each section and then put the pictures on the page. And I went through all that trouble when I could have just put the text on the page. But I mean, it was like, oh my God, this is so bad.
That's actually kind of awesome. Let's face it.
Well, that's yeah,
some dedication.
Yeah, and you certainly deal with that, and that's thankfully not.
Oh, Curtis froze.
Oh no.
Oh no.
We lost him.
Was a screenshot of an HTML table that was then stretched to bad proportions and embedded on their page. And it's like, what good does that do anybody? I mean, even I can't read it,
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to the academic freedom thing that we always fought with individual professors and their research projects. And I'm going to put up whatever I want to put up. This is my site. I can do whatever I want to do with it under the state's dime and all this and that. That's where we always fought. Everything from accessibility to you name it. That's where we fought it. That's where just about all of our battles came into those situations.
So I have a question, if I can throw that out, Chris, and I'll play off you on this because you know how much I love doing that. So how many of your instructors actually leave their content on the websites for the institutions versus taking it completely off? I know some instructors, I'm not one of them, but some of the instructors will actually say, no, I am not putting any of my content on whether it's the course shell, whether that be WordPress, whether that be your portal, whatever it is, and they actually redirect their students completely outside. Does anybody do that? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
It happens here all the time. Yeah, we have all kinds of people that do that. There's a lot of people that are like, I want to, we have some people who like to tinker, and they're like, oh, we want to be able, can you let me put scripts in? I'm like, no, we can't let you put scripts in. And they're like, well, I don't want to use your CMS. And they were like, okay, well, go build your own website. Maybe not the best philosophy, but it happens a lot.
Well, maybe not from a technical standpoint, but like they just say, no, I'm not keeping my stuff on your servers at all. Like any of your content, any slides, nothing. Because I know that is becoming a big thing up here, regardless of the technology that we're using. It's not just because, say, for example, I deal in WordPress, and because Sheridan College doesn't use WordPress, we have our own server that hosts it, but it's for our own students. But if I wanted to take that and move it offline, they really can't stop it. But I'm sort of seeing a sort of tug of war when it comes to where we're talking about ownership, right? So where does that content belong and who owns it?
Something that, another issue, I guess, that we have a lot in higher ed is just like turnover. Whether it's students or just, faculty and staff, that a lot of faculty here, you can create your own website and it can be on our domain, whatever, and then they'll be all excited and they'll want to make a website and then they never touch it again. And that's not necessarily turnover, but that is a big issue that we have, and that we have just tons of sites that just haven't been touched ever. They were touched once when they were launched, never again. And then we have, because of like staffing issues, people will have like students, they'll give students access to do stuff. And then students leave, and like all students should eventually, and and so that's a problem, that's an issue, and it also brings up like security issues because people will give students passwords and stuff, and then students will leave, and then people won't change the password, and then things happen. Thankfully not that much happens, but it's stuff happens, and so
enough happens. I wrote a whole plugin for just that purpose.
There's a FYI, there is a WordCampus Slack account that I've started, and if you fill out the form on WordCampus.org, you can send me your info and I'll invite you. And so people are sending. You just joined it?
I did.
Awesome. Well, they're sending me messages. Someone said that they have small groups that do what Shanto was talking about, and they're using WordPress.org, and it makes them mad all the time. Sorry, WordPress.com, and it makes them mad.
Yeah, we don't let them use .com.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, if you are interested in helping out Rachel and her cause, feel free to go to WordCampus.org. Send her any help you can get. I think it'd be really interesting. I do not work in higher ed, but I'd probably still find all this stuff pretty interesting. So I think that a WordCamp kind of thing should happen, especially because accessibility is a huge thing, and I think that if it stems from education and it floods into small business or more into enterprise, I think that'd be a really good thing overall for the World Wide Web as we know it. So yeah, WordCampus.org. Thank you guys for joining us. To next week. See you guys later.